we also wanted to update you on some major economic news. First of all, a little update on just how the American people are doing. Put this first part up on the screen. There was a lot of talk about how during the pandemic, there's a big savings boom. In part, people weren't going out. They were at home. So there were fewer things to spend money on. But also the pandemic era programs, the relief checks that sort of padded a lot of bank accounts. That era is officially over. The savings rate fell to 4.4% in April. That's actually the lowest level since 2008. So already the sort of, Fed attempts to slow the economy and the end of all of those COVID relief programs, that has hit bank accounts, savings accounts in particular, in a very serious way. This comes as we have comments from another Federal Reserve board member that indicate this one in particular really wants to take a pretty aggressive approach to tightening the economy. Go ahead and put this Wall Street Journal tear sheet up on the screen. The headline here is Fed official supports raising interest rates at fast clip for several meetings. This particular board, Fed Governor Christopher Waller, made these remarks in Frankfurt on Monday. He said, I support tightening policy by 50 basis points for several meetings, and went so far as to say that he wanted to keep going until the rates were so high they stunted the economy. Now, you have to kind of, dig into the Fed jargon here, but what he said was, quote, the unemployment rate will increase, but only somewhat because labor demand is still strong, just not as strong, and because when the labor market is very tight as it is now, vacancies generate relatively few hires, thus reducing vacancies from an extremely high level to a lower but still strong level has a relatively limited effect on hiring and on unemployment. So he's trying to sort of justify the fact that he intentionally wants to go so far with lifting the rates and at such a rapid pace as to actively stunt the economy and raise the unemployment rate. Those are pretty dramatic comments and, landed with a pretty heavy blow within the entire sort of economic thinker community. There's another big development here, which is that Biden is actually meeting with Fed Chair Jerome Powell today. Go ahead and put this up on the screen. He's going to hold a rare Oval Office meeting today on Tuesday amid the highest inflation in decades, which has angered Americans and hurt his standing with voters. They say the two will discuss the state of the American and global economy. According to a White House statement, it is the first meeting between the two since Biden in November announced his intention to nominate Powell for a second term as the helm of the U.S. Central Bank. And the reason this is extraordinary is because, of course, there's a lot of criticism of Trump when he was out there, directly telling the Fed what he wanted them to do.
I kind of liked that, actually. I will tell you.
And so Biden, and this is kind of funny, too, put this last piece up on the screen. So Biden wrote this op-ed about his plan for inflation. This is from Kaylin Collins. She says, President Biden, who's meeting with Fed Chair Jay Powell tomorrow, publishes an op-ed on inflation where he says he welcomes debate on his plan and will work with anyone, Democrat, Republican, or independent, willing to have an honest and open discussion. He goes out of his way in this op-ed to say, of course, I'm not going to meddle with the Fed. Trump did that. That was bad. But I will tackle high prices. And in this op-ed, he lays out, Saagar, his quote-unquote plan for dealing with inflation. The first one is the Fed.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's saying, I'm not meddling with the Fed, but also, hey, Fed, you better act here, and I'm going to have you over to the Oval Office to make sure you know what I want.
The one thing you could say about Trump is he did understand how intrinsic low interest rates were to the bedrock of the economy that he presided over at the time. And, look, I think that monetary policy has actually for too long kind of been kicked up to the higher thinkers that be over at the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
This is the people's policy. This goes back to William Jennings Bryan and the idea of being crucified on a cross of gold, which is we had entire uprisings in movements in this country about how exactly we were going to both regulate commerce and how to conduct trade at the very basic level of currency. I think that's okay. I think that's a good thing, and that people have forgotten their legacy. And the other problem I have with this entire BS op-ed is if you're going to do it, then do it. Do what Trump did. Be like, no, you need to keep the interest rates low. You need to do this. You need to do that. Instead, it's all this mealy-mouthed nonsense. His second thing that he says, in order to make things affordable, This is what he says is his plan for inflation, Krystal. He says, blah, 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 blah. There's been an entire paragraph, and he goes, my plan would reduce the average family's utility bills by $500 and accelerate our transition from energy produced by autocrats. 500, that's your selling point? This is like when Paul Ryan and them were like, you're going to save $120 from your tax return. It's like, that's a Costco membership or something. It's like, this is so cringe. I have already put out the data. Already, as of right now, Americans are on track to spend 73% more on gas than they did just last year. That's $4,800 versus $2,300. So your $500, nothing relative to how much that actually is. Same in terms of we're going to reduce the cost of goods by fixing broken supply chains, improving infrastructure, and cracking down on fees of foreign products. First of all, why haven't you done that already to the full extent of your ability through executive action? There has not been one executive order on any single one of these, except one on the meatpacking plants about a year ago where they said, we're going to look into it. What's happening?
Right.
Still waiting on that one. And the third one, and look, I don't even disagree. He talks about reducing the price of prescription drugs so that they can negotiate. Listen, I support that 100%. Take a look at a chart. Prescription drugs are not even close in terms of what the largest drivers of inflation are. Are they too expensive? Absolutely, but it is not having a significant impact relative to how it was previously than gas, energy prices, new cars, rent, so many other things. So his inability to even identify the top drivers of inflation, which is gas and food, and not really tell anybody what exactly he's going to do about that, makes the whole quote-unquote plan obsolete, moot, and frankly stupid.
The only part of this that is actually going to happen is the part that has nothing to do with a democratic system, which is the Fed.
Right.
That's the only part, because the rest of this, whatever you think about it, it's all things that were in Build Back Better that didn't pass and are not going to pass. I mean, I would love for you to do the prescription drug price thing.
I think that's great.
You've been literally running on that for over a decade, and it still hasn't happened. So do I have any confidence that that's going to be any different? Put aside whether it would have, which it wouldn't, any significant impact on inflation. So, I mean, this is messaging. This is, and he talks about, what's his face, Scott, the Republican plan to lift taxes.
Rick Scott.
Rick Scott, yeah. I want to say Scott Walker. My brain is malfunctioning this morning. Anyway, a little throwback there. Rick Scott's plan to lift taxes on people and sunset Medicare and Medicaid every 5 years. So he's realized a year too late that inflation is a big issue. Americans are really struggling with it. They're very upset about it. It is the number one reason why Democrats are set for a massive shellacking in the midterms. And so here we are, May of 2022, and he's trying to come up with some kind of messaging to say, well, you may not be happy, but my plan's better than the Republicans ultimately, even though we know that, none of this outside of the Fed is actually going to happen. The clean energy tax credits one is kind of funny too, because the way he wrote this, he says, Congress could help by passing clean energy tax credits. A dozen CEOs of America's largest utility companies told me earlier this year my plan would reduce the average family's annual utility bills by $500. Keep in mind that those largest utility companies, when you're talking about clean energy tax credits, that's a giveaway to them. So also, they have a big incentive to be like, yes, this would be great. People would love it. In any case, none of this is going to happen. None of it's particularly serious. And he continues to leave off the table the thing that he could have the most control over, which you alluded to earlier, which is but it's not the whole problem, part of the problem is corporate price gouging, because you have these consolidated monopolistic industries where they're able to use the specter of inflation to then go ahead and boost their prices beyond what those price increases that inflation would demand. That's the part that the White House could actually have some impact on through executive power and also through the bully pulpit. And there continues to be, no willingness basically to call that out or try to do anything about that.
Yeah, let me return. I was just pulling this up on the savings rate. So the savings rate has now fallen to the lowest level since 2008. And what the Biden people try to spin is, yeah, but people still have a lot of savings because people's pandemic savings was actually gone up to sky high. But what do we already know? Especially with the decline of 401k and more, which is that the savings has gone down significantly just within the last year. So yeah, you may have saved a lot 2 years ago, but when the saving rate declines, that means that your disposable income that you have right now is dwindling. And even worse, as inflation gets more out of control, you're gonna have to continue to dip into your savings in order to pay for your basic household goods, so that 1 year away, I think all of us can look at a credit card bill relative to what it used to be. How many people are going to the grocery store and you buy 5 things and you're like, I can literally not even believe that this is how expensive it is.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's happening every day. It chips away, and then people come times to pay your credit card bill or time to check your balance, and you have to move stuff over from your savings account. This is what millions of people are having to go through, and it's gonna chip away constantly. So when the savings rate drops like this, it's actually a future indicator that past savings are going to go away, and we're all gonna be in a much more difficult and precarious financial situation. And unfortunately, given the prevailing economic thinking in Washington, kind of typified by this guy who's like, let's just nuke the entire economy with very, very high interest rates, apparently that is actually a completely fine thing to hold. But look, that is definitely I would say the center thinking amongst people who run the Fed. Now, they're going to try and balance it, public opinion, and Jerome Powell will say yes, but we have to target unemployment. But the political pressure right now, both from Biden and from others, in order to do something, they only have one tool, and that's to basically slow the entire economy down by making money a lot more expensive, which can nuke the housing market. It can basically destroy a lot of new small business investment. I mean, some of the stories that I'm hearing, again, from the private markets are insane. You have companies that had billion-dollar valuations based upon X amount of money that they were willing to raise, that they've cut it by 1/3, maybe 1/4. And so now their valuation in the private market is like $250 million. I mean, that stuff has real-world consequences for whether you can make payroll, whether you can take loans based upon that on the banks. I mean, there's an entire financial house of cards that was architected on the back of low interest rates and where things are right now. I mean, I look at the housing thing. I mean, it's 6%. Well, didn't you tell me it was like it's hundreds of thousands of dollars relative to the same interest rate for the price of a house that you're going to buy? I mean, we could be entering the era of the 90s and the 80s and the 70s where you're getting 9-10% interest rate if you try and buy a house.
Monthly mortgage payment for the median, home price has gone up by 50%.
Oh my God.
I mean, so yeah, it's already been hugely impactful in terms of what people can do. And yeah, so I mean, you literally have a Fed governor saying, it is my goal to make the unemployment rate worse. Like, that is my goal.
Yeah.
And obviously, that has massive consequences. And one thing, obviously, we tracked really closely on this show is the labor movement and the energy there, and how workers feel like they have this power, even though the economy sucks. But there are a lot of jobs. The problem isn't a job. The problem is getting a good job. And so that has contributed to this wave of organizing that has been extraordinary. I mean, Starbucks across the country, Amazon, Apple, all these, Target now, unionizing efforts. And all of that is also very much in danger if you have a high unemployment rate, because then people get afraid of, God, I can't rock the boat in this job because I just need a job, any job, versus, you know what? I can stay here and I can actually have the bandwidth to fight for a better job. So listen, you guys know there is a lot at stake with all of this right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.